Everyone, and hello everyone and welcome. I'm really excited that you're joining us today for our really important webinar on medical school admissions, how to use medical school mission statements to guide your application decisions. My name is Layla Miri and I will serve as the moderator for our session today. Next slide, please. So what are the goals of this session? Today, we have some very clear ideas on things that we want to convey to you. First, we want to review how medical schools use holistic review by defining priority experiences, attributes, and metrics that are really tied to their mission. So how do schools use their mission to identify their admissions processes? We want you to understand that your advantage when you align your why with the mission of the medical school in your application. So we want you to have an understanding of why it is you're pursuing medicine, who the medical school is aiming to train, and for you to align these two together. We want you to know and understand the mission of medical school, and understanding that is a skill that you can develop. So how can you read a mission statement, understand what it is, and to see if you're aligned with the mission of that school? We would love to answer your mission-related admissions questions, and if there's time, we'll do a summary of what we've learned today together, and we'll do a wrap-up. So let's just make sure that we're all comfortable with the AAMC model for holistic review, because you've probably heard about it. And holistic review really is a balanced way of looking at experiences, attributes, and metrics, and understanding how, in the context of the mission of the institution and the context of the student, how that applicant can add value to the educational experience at the institution, and very importantly, be a strong component of the healthcare delivery team moving forward. So we look at experiences, which are those things that you've done during the course of your pre-med time, in an attempt to indicate to us that you have an understanding of the field. Attributes are those things that are unique to you. So it might be where you grew up, it might be your ethnicity, your gender identity, perspectives that you have. And metrics are those things that help schools have a better understanding of your ability to be successful and to thrive in the environment and the educational experiences that they provide to you. Next slide, please. So let's think a little bit about the mission of the school. The mission of the school is really the goals that the institution has for itself as an academic center. So it informs the structure and the content of the curriculum. So what is the content that we're teaching, and how is that content structured for the students that we intend to recruit? It impacts the student life and support services. So based on the type of student that we would like to recruit and train at our institutions, we, through the mission, we try to convey to you what type of support we offer for you as a student and what your lived experience would be at our institution. It absolutely influences our admissions practices and priorities. So who are the students that we prioritize in the admissions process, and again, who have a personal mission that's in alignment with the mission that we have for our institution. And finally, it's reflected in the professional activities of our graduates. And so as medical schools, we all keep close tabs on our alumni, see where they've gone, where they're practicing. And so the hope is that the student that we admit becomes the physician that we intended to train as they're leaving the institution and moving on with their career. Next slide, please. So what we want you to do today is think about what's your why. So think about a couple of words that will define why it is that you've chosen this profession for yourself. And so I know this might be something that you weren't expecting to do today. And so this will be an opportunity for you to learn from the panelists that we have with us today. Each of our panelists will introduce themselves and share with you their why. And as they're sharing their whys and letting you know why it is that they've engaged with the profession that they have, we want you to think about your why. In the next slide, you'll see a QR code. We're going to ask you to, in the slide that follows, we're going to ask you to copy the QR code and enter your why in there as you're hearing our panelists speak. So as you're thinking about your why, some of the things that you can think about are, what are the type of patient populations that you'd like to serve? Who would you want your peers to be as you're embarking on this journey of becoming a physician, which you all know is going to be rigorous? What kind of support services do you need as an adult learner that'll help you be successful? What's the learning environment that you need? What type of other support mechanisms do you need in place? What's the best way for you to learn? What's the best type of curriculum that allows you to be engaged, again, as an adult learner, in grasping this information that we're sharing with you? What issues are important to you? How do you want to see those issues reflected in the practices of the medical schools that you're considering applying to? If a particular community is important to you, for whom you'd like to advocate, how important is it for you for that type of advocacy to be embedded in the curriculum, for example? And you can look at the career paths of the graduates. Are those career paths that you'd like to align yourself with and places that you'd like to land with your career? Okay, I think our next slide is a slide that has the QR code. Yep, here you go. So this will take you to this poll. And again, just think of a couple of words, 2 to 3 words that define your passion, your why for medicine. And with that, I will begin asking our panelists to introduce themselves. Hopefully you've all had enough time to screen grab the QR code. So our first panelist is Ms. Casey Sheehan from Georgetown University.
Thanks so much. So my name is Casey Sheehan, and I am the Associate Director for Admissions at Georgetown University School of Medicine. I have been working for the School of Medicine for about 6 years now and have worked with the Office of Admissions for the past 4 years. And my why is I love having a role in the process that finds future physicians. And then I also get to work with them throughout their 4 years in the recruitment process and outreach efforts. And I really get to watch them grow and continue with their medical school education, which I think is a really exciting thing to see. And then I also want to continue to push for a more equitable admissions process. I think this is one of the most important things admissions offices across the country can keep doing. And so that's really something that I'm super passionate about and why I love the role that I have and why I do what I do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sheehan. And our next panelist is Dr. Berman.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Deb Berman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I have the honor and privilege of wearing 3 professional hats at the University of Michigan. One is that I'm the interim dean for admissions for the medical school. The second is I am the faculty director for M-Home, our learning community in the medical school, which is solely focused on creating community and support for our students. And the third is I'm a professor of obstetrics and gynecology in the Division of Maternal Fetal Medicine. So I'm a high-risk obstetrician and fetal therapist. When I was asked to join this panel and speak to what is my why, I actually think with those hats, I have 2 different whys. The first one I think about is why my clinical practice? Why am I a high-risk OB? And if you made me boil it down to one word, kind of like we asked you to think about, I would say advocacy. Advocacy has been a thread through my work when I was a pre-med student in college to my years here in med school and beyond. And I'm glad to speak more about that at another point. I think one of my other hat as the Dean for Admissions, what is my why in that role? What I would say is this: I think medicine is remarkable. I really do think it's one of the most noble professions. At the same time, we have a lot of work to be done in medicine. And I'm deeply committed to working with our remarkable admissions team to build classes of diverse medical students who are going to transform the face of medicine in ways that are really so profoundly needed. So those are 2 of my whys of why I have the honor and privilege of sitting in these spaces.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berman. And Dr. Ross.
Thank you. Well, good morning to you all. Thanks for joining in the webinar. I'm Dr. Ross. Well, I similarly have a number of hats. I am by nature a clinical nephrologist who does epidemiology. I have the position, I have the fortune of serving as Associate Dean for Diversity, and I work extensively with our admissions, Student Affairs Office on recruitment and retention of students, residents, and faculty. I also serve as the university's principal officer for community partnerships and really moving our student body, our residents, our whole community to engage in meaningful partnerships with the community around promotion of health equity. And I'm also a faculty member. I'm an endowed professor in the kidney division, division of nephrology at Washington University School of Medicine. And I've been in here for, my goodness, 26 years. So I'm an old guy. My why is really simple. It's related to the fact that I grew up in an inner city environment in Memphis, Tennessee, back in the 60s. And I saw a lot of people succumb to chronic diseases that were very treatable. And they succumbed because they didn't have access to healthcare or weren't treated in a manner that I thought was appropriate. And so my why, I'm going to boil it down to 2 words. I want to develop, I want dignity and respect, and I want science that addresses health disparities. That's more than 2 words. But essentially, that's my why. That's driven why I'm here to this day. And I hope that resonates with many of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ross, and thank you to all of our panelists. I know that you were excited about having the opportunity to hear from our speakers, and now that you've heard from them, I hope you're even doubly excited as I am right now, because we've got a lot to share with you this morning. So I think the words are coming into the word cloud. So we're going to share with you some of the ideas that you had, and as we expected, your whys are very similar to the whys of our esteemed panelists here. You see equity, advocacy, learning, support, healing, compassion. I love it. Community, education. So think about your whys. And as you see for our faculty members here and for our admissions representatives here, their whys are what sustains them through the careers that they have. So think about your whys as you're going through this process, because that's what's going to keep you going.
Hey,
Now,
Layla,
yes.
I would love to have a copy of that word cloud. That was so beautiful.
It is, and I hope that our AAMC colleagues will be able to capture that and share it with us. I agree with you. It was fantastic, and it just kept on getting better as I was talking. I saw the other words that were coming in. All right, so attendees, let's talk a little bit about getting in versus choosing. Where you go to medical school is really important. And I didn't share my credentials with you when I first opened. So I also serve as a Associate Dean for Admissions at the University of Vermont. And so I've been doing work in the admissions arena for quite some time. And so the conversation that we have with students is always, I just need to get into one place. And we're trying to get you to think differently about this. We want you to get into the place that's the right place for you. And while it may not seem that way for you because you're at the application part, you are the person who makes the decision on where you're going to go, right? Because we can make an offer to you and you can choose to join us or not. And so the goal for us today is for you to think very deeply about yourself and your why, and in a few minutes to hear from our panelists as well about the missions that they have for their institutions, and so that you really select an institution that's most closely aligned with the passions that you have and the goals that the institution has for training of their students. So I want you to not get overwhelmed in this process. I want you to trust in yourselves and have faith in yourselves and know that you absolutely deserve all the great things that are coming to you, including the opportunity to learn from the individuals that you've seen here on our panel. One housekeeping point that I want to share with you is that there's a Q&A box. Please drop whatever questions you have in the Q&A. Once our panelists are done with their presentations, we will open it up to you for any questions that you might have. But we're not going to respond to anything in the chat because we want you to focus on the discussion that we have here. Okay, let's get started and hear about the missions of the different medical schools. And again, just to remind you, what's going to happen right now is each of our institutions has selected their mission statement. They'll read their mission statement with you. They've highlighted a component of their mission statement, and all components of the mission statement are important, but for purposes of this presentation, they've only picked one, and how they assess that in the application process. And then they follow through with how a student will experience that once they are there in their curriculum. All right, let's get started.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Perfect. So the sentence that I chose from our mission statement is guided by the Jesuit tradition of Cura Personalis. GUSOM will educate a diverse student body in an integrated way to become knowledgeable, ethical, skillful, and compassionate physicians and biomedical scientists who are dedicated to the care of others and the health needs of our society. So how this comes out in the evaluation process is this idea of Cura Personalis really guides everything that we do at the School of Medicine. It means care of the whole person. So we think about it in the way that medicine at its core is obviously rooted in science, but also thinking about medicine, that it's really a human to human interaction. And we want to make sure that our students are realizing that when they meet their patients, they're meeting them at a really difficult time for them. Oftentimes, the patient's going to be nervous, scared, have fear, concerns, and making sure that they are realizing that it's a human being in front of them. And that they need to do everything they can to treat that person and think about them as a human instead of just the reason that they're there. So how we think about it also is serving underserved communities. So at Georgetown, service is something that's really, really important to us. We think that as medical students, you already have a huge platform, and you really need to use that platform to serve underserved populations, uninsured populations, homeless populations. So we try to find applicants that have really interesting, diverse backgrounds and can bring a lot to their classmates, but are all kind of tied together by this passion to serve underserved communities, to give back to the community they live in, and to take care of others and think about when they're treating their patients, coming to them from this really compassionate place where they're meeting them where they are and are doing everything they can to take care of them, make sure that they feel heard, and that they feel that they're not just like a number in a system, but really taken care of by that physician. So that's kind of some of the ways that we evaluate students, and we're really looking for that passion in our applicants. And how that relates once you're at GUSOM is you will have plenty of time to actually give back to the DC community, to work in student-run free clinics, to give back to all the different types of patient populations that are in DC. Also, we have a couple ways globally that you can give back to underserved communities as well. And we have Cura Personalis kind of tied in so that we're always thinking about it and teaching our students to put the patient first and to make sure everything they're doing is put with the patient being first in mind.
Thank you so much, Casey. So could I ask you really quickly, where in the application specifically will you look to see that a student has a commitment to serving underserved communities?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So one of the big sections is through their experiences. So do they have a history of giving back to underserved populations? Is it something clearly that they really have a passion for and have spent a lot of time doing? And then also in their secondary essay, which we asked them why Georgetown, just reading that and seeing if they really understand the mission and if they are drawn to our mission statement and want to be that type of physician. And if Georgetown would be a place that could kind of be a great stepping stone for them to launch them into their career where they would be really focused on advocacy and giving back to underserved communities. So just them reiterating it in that as well is another area that's really a great place to see that.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're going to with Dr. Berman now. Yes.
Hi, everyone. So when I looked at our mission statement, what I really wanted to focus on were the phrases, the University of Michigan will transform health through bold and innovative education, discovery, and service. And I think you're hearing a very common theme through all of our discussions. And for me, what that is, and for our team, what that is that medicine is a life of service. It is a true life of service to people. For many fields of medicine, working to heal humans, for many other fields of medicine, to care for those whom you might not be able to heal, but you want to support them through these complex journeys. And so for me, we really want to address challenges in healthcare, and those desires to help and serve other humans should not be put on hold for med school. We are really striving to find applicants who want to serve others and make an impact. What I want to note here is that service doesn't always mean volunteerism. Service can be becoming the type of physician that you want to be. Is that a scientist? Is that a researcher who's going to serve others by doing groundbreaking research or being part of a team that changes the face of medicine? Is that a leader in medicine? You look at Dr. Amiri, you have been a leader in the AAMC and a leader in your spaces, and that changes the face of medicine. And so being a leader, a clinician, a scientist, a researcher, whatever you've envisioned yourself or you think you might want to do, I consider service. We definitely look for that in an application. And so if you say my service is to helping educate others, we see students who haven't done research, who haven't volunteered at a food bank, but have excellent experience in tutoring children or peers or so many others. That's service. So service doesn't fit into this perfect little box. We don't have this view of what service looks like. I think it looks like serving and supporting others. And so I think one of the questions that Dr. Amiri asked us to do was to say, when you look at our mission statement, what does our curriculum look like to speak to that? And one thing that I would highlight at the University of Michigan's curriculum is our impact curriculum, which provides the framework for students to take on the problems that matter most to them. And so our students have the opportunity to do what's called a capstone for impact project that is uniquely theirs. They can choose to make an impact via a path of excellence, as I mentioned, through a leadership program. Is it a dual degree? Is it one of our 4 branch concentrations? Just really delving into what their own journey is, what they want it to be, and how they can help that launch them into becoming the physician or healthcare provider or community member they want to be.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berman. I hope you all have a better understanding of U of M and what they're looking for in your application. Okay, Dr. Ross.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. Well, I extracted this sentence from our mission statement. We will use our academic excellence and scientific rigor to continually advance and enhance healthcare in a way that ensures access, compassion, high value, equity, and evidence-based care for all people in our community, including those who are underserved and uninsured. Again, you're seeing this theme resonate among these 3 schools. And so how do we evaluate that? How do we execute that mission within medical school and within our medical school, and how do we ascertain that our applicants have embraced that and shown evidence that they truly can relate to that mission? Well, let me start with the applicant first. We really want to we want to be certain that our students truly understand what we mean by the social and structural determinants of health and service to the surrounding community. And any applicant to any medical school, U.S. medical school, should understand what those social determinants of health are. And I think many of us understand the definition, the economic and social conditions that influence individuals and group differences in health. And so let me give an example of what that means. I look at a lot of personal statements. I read those personal statements the way I read a novel in my office. And I'm looking for evidence that a student has been involved in not just the care of an individual, but the care of the community. It's an example of a patient. This is just even this morning. I was reading a statement. A student was taking care of a patient with severe diabetes. The patient could not afford the insulin and had been in and out of the hospital. And the student really understood those social and structural determinants about access to a physician, the role of poverty, and reducing access to a needed treatment like insulin, as well as a lack of social support that patient experienced. And this student really articulated this, talked about their commitment, as well as talked about the need to really address the health of the community, not just the health of the individual. That's how we ascertain that students are mission aligned. We get away from the term fit. No, they're mission aligned. And for Washington University, for us, that means that we integrate public health and population health into our curriculum, into our practices, into our policies, so that when students come here, irrespective of whether or not that student is going to be a student in our MD PhD program doing basic science or clinical translational research, whether they're going to be a student who's really going to catch on to our education pedagogy, what the students who really want to go and do primary care or specialization. We want every student to understand that we have a role in population health. It should be embedded in every medical school, and it is really seamlessly woven into what you will encounter here at Washington University. So that's kind of what we look for, and I'm very sure that many of you will be looking at your personal statements and really asking, can you truly outline that why for your applications to Washington University? Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. So before we move to questions, I just want to remind you all that please drop your questions in the Q&A. We'll get to as many of them as we possibly can. And I just want to remind you that our panelists begin with their why, and I hope that you saw as they described their institutions, you saw how their whys were embedded in the institutions that they represent and the work that they do. So I'm going to read the questions for our panelists, and I'll just ask you to answer them as we go through with them. And I'm handpicking the ones that are directly related to admissions. But before we start, Dr. Berman and Dr. Ross, there's a question here that I think is really important for you to address as physicians. The applicant says, in moments where you're feeling your weakest, for example, uninspired, procrastinating, discouraged, etc., what do you remember to keep yourself moving forward? Are there any stories you can share to add to our arsenal of experiences that we can learn from and build upon? Sometimes it's hard to remember that physicians are humans too and deal with stress, frustration, and I know that there are many things we can learn from you all. So while that's not admissions related, I think it's important for us to address that because we have you here. Dr. Ross, you're muted.
Yeah, I think that's very admissions related. Let me give you a real quick story. I used to be the medical director of a public hospital in St. Louis, and it closed. And I was packing my bags and leaving the hospital when it closed, and I was still faculty member at Washington University. And one of my former patients grabbed my hand and says, "Dr. Ross, please don't forget about us." And she would not let go. She says, "You know what I mean. Please do not forget about us." Now, this is an inner city public hospital in St. Louis. That is absolutely embedded into my core. When I'm at my weakest, when I say I'm so frustrated, I have to remember, who am I doing this for? And I have to remember doing this for the greater good, for that patient, for that community. And it puts everything into perspective. And all of a sudden, my small problems become even more minimalized. And I realize that I'm doing this for a much larger purpose. So I will never forget that story. I'll never forget that patient. And I never will forget why I chose to go into medicine based on that story.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Dr. Berman?
A hard story to follow, Dr. Ross.
I know.
I first want to just acknowledge the question and sit with that question for a moment, because I actually think that's the important point. This is somebody who already is aware that we are humans. We are not perfect. We're not striving for perfection. We're striving to help ourselves and help others. And when I think about University of Michigan's M-Home and our learning community, which is there to support other students in the community, I realized that probably a long time ago, Ross, Dr. Ross, you can speak to this as well. I would say The expectation years ago was almost, and sorry to use a militaristic description, but to be on a linear war path, that you go from here to here to here to here. And that's not the case anymore. So if you are in college, or you're out of college, or you're on this circuitous path and you don't feel at your best today, one thing I am still growing up and doing is recognizing it is okay to sit in that and to say, today is going to be a day that I do some self-care, and that's going to help me be a better physician tomorrow. As a high-risk obstetrician, we deal with a lot of trauma, a lot of hard cases. And I think there are days it's easy to, my eyes open and say, oh my gosh, what am I going to be facing today? And having partners, having friends, having family, having mentors, having people that I can connect with is important. And slowly creating a change in the culture of medicine, which you're doing by asking that question, that you don't have to be on this linear war path every single day, is crucial to your journey. And if that's something you think about, I would say incorporate that in your messaging, in your personal statements. It's clearly something important enough to you that you ask. So I'm a little passionate about that topic. So thank you for that important question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berman. We have a few questions that relate to non-traditional students, so I'll combine those into one and then ask for your comments. So students are wondering how your schools look at students that might be a little older, students that might be non-traditional, and how would you address that in the application process?
I know I just spoke, but I'd love to jump in on that one. If you look at this incoming class we just had, 90% of our students are not straight out of college. So it is varied through the years. We look at the context of an individual person's journey. So we are not ageist. We are looking for people who want to be in medicine and are committed to this. And we understand that that has changed through the years. So maybe somebody was a teacher for 8 years and then realized in that their advocacy has shifted into medicine. So Michigan welcomes that. But again, I think to Casey's point, we want to hear about that in your personal statement. We want you to describe that journey, not what you think we want to hear, but what has your journey been?
Thank you, Dr.
To add on to that, I get asked all the time kind of what are red flags or things people shouldn't write about in secondary essays or personal statements. And I think really the only red flag is not being true to yourself and not really telling your story. So if you tell your story and you had bumps, you had obstacles you went through, that's not a red flag to anyone. Everyone that's in the admissions process has gone through different difficulties themselves. So I would say don't worry about that at all. And same thing as Dr. Berman just said, our class was 75% that didn't come in straight from undergrad. So non-traditional student at this point feels like such an antiquated term. I don't even think it should exist anymore. But yeah, so do not fear if you're a non-traditional student or applicant. It's really just you bring a really different, diverse, interesting background to the class that we find really interesting.
Great. Thank you, Casey. I think this next question is one that you've all fielded previously. In the personal statements or general essays, are there topics that should not be mentioned, especially already stigmatized topics, even if such a topic explains an excellent why the applicant is passionate about that school and or medical field? For example, an applicant who is recovered but has past history of substance use wants to use their unique lived experiences to address folks with drug addiction, an underserved population that's often discriminated against in healthcare settings and thus receives poor care.
Yeah, I understand that question, and I think it behooves the applicant to state what is it about my experience that has created who I am. You know, this person who is well positioned in this the field of medicine, and who has shaped your thoughts, your thoughts, practices, and experiences. And those experiences are the ones that should be illuminated, should help illuminate us as the missions committee. That means that it has to be there. The personal statements have to be personal. They should not be a reiteration of all those wonderful things that you did in college. We get that. We can read that. But we get lots of applications, the three of us, and we want to go through and see, that student who's really going to be deeply personal and say, here's why I'm committed to medicine. Here's why I'm unique. And we can't tell you what should be included or not included in that statement. That's your personal decision, but it has to be something that will excite us about your application. You have to make the decision on how far to go in terms of providing information which is not which may highlight a part of your application which could be less than make your application less than stellar. That's a personal decision, but please make the personal statements have to be personal. And I think we just we'll go with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ross. I have 3 questions that are directed to each of you, so I'll read those and ask you to answer them. Dr. Ross, I know this is going to be interesting for you because you're at WashU and we've had this discussion before. Can you speak to the importance of research? Is it necessary to have traditional research experience to apply to medical school?
Oh, unequivocally, the answer is no. You do not have to have research to apply to a research-intensive school like Washington University and others. You don't have to have entered into a basic science laboratory at any time. But what you should have is desire to really probe an area. You should understand hypothesis-driven research. And you can apply that in clinical research. You can apply that in public health research, population-based research. You can apply that in looking at why a certain population is food insecure versus others. We want you to have that scholarly thinking, using your intellectual skills to probe an issue and really expound upon that in your application or in your experiences. That's what we're looking for. Research means that you have explored. You understand scientific inquiry, and you can make judgments and conclusions based on all that. That's what we're looking for, and that's a skill set that you can acquire without doing basic science research.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Dr. Berman, as a practicing clinician or aspiring medical student, what does advocacy look like at different levels, individual doctor-patient interactions and in the systemic level?
So for me, I will say, I'm going to put it out there, I am a high-risk obstetrician. I take care of pregnant people throughout their reproductive journey. So for me personally, advocacy is meeting my patients where they're at in their complex journey and supporting them. For other physicians, advocacy looks very different in many ways. My husband is a child adolescent psychiatrist. One of the many reasons he has stayed at the University of Michigan in his role is that in the state of Michigan, when children or adolescents have exhausted their care in northern Michigan or the Upper Peninsula, here at the University of Michigan, he can advocate for patients because they can come irrespective of insurance, no insurance, and care for them. He can write to schools, he can support their learning processes. So I think as a clinician, advocacy is literally at the clinical level. As Dr. Ross said, I think advocacy at a global level at a university looks really different, whether it's advocating in the classroom for our learners for equitable, fair learning and inspiring our students to push us and push the field of medicine. Our students who choose to do research, they're advocating with their mentors to figure out how to push the limits there. It can be advocating in our community for better services for Ozone House, our youth homeless shelter here in Ann Arbor. I can go on and on, but advocacy is multifaceted, whether you are a practicing clinician or a member of this community.
Thank you so much. Ms. Sheehan, I have two questions for you. I'll try to wrap them into one. So it's in alignment with the mission statement, does your institution have higher rates of primary care specialties for their graduates that continue to serve communities after medical school? And how does your institution give back to DC?
Yeah, great questions. So we actually kind of evenly across the board split into all the different specialties. Our highest is internal medicine, but we do always have a huge group of students that go into primary care. But also, I think it's important, the majority of our students do go into cities where no matter what specialty they're in, they are giving back to underserved populations. So that's definitely something, they're kind of split across all specialties, but they do end up at hospitals that they have really diverse patient populations where they are serving all types of populations and oftentimes uninsured and underserved populations. We do have all the specialties listed on our website if you want to look at that. But then how do we work with DC? So there's a couple different ways. We are super lucky to be in DC that we have so much around us that we can take advantage of. One of the ways is we have 2 free clinics now that are both in underserved areas in DC that are completely student-led. They're run by a team of second-year students and staffed by M1 through M4 students. So that's one of the huge ways that our students really love to give back. Built into the curriculum for their preclinical year and a half, they actually have a course where every about 2 to 3 weeks they'll go to different locations in the DC area, underserved schools, food banks, different advocacy groups, and actually give back and donate their time to those groups as well. So that's one of the ways. And then another really cool, unique thing that we have is this opportunity to work with Georgetown law students to actually work with different ideas and things that they're really passionate about. For example, like the price of pharmaceutical drugs, healthcare rights for incarcerated people, nutrition classes for underserved elementary schools. And they actually go downtown and lobby on the Hill to actually change legislature and have a chance to impact some of the stuff at a government level. So that's really awesome as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Opposite to what's been discussed, any suggestions for applicants who are more traditional but still very passionate about going into medicine? Are there ways to stand out if you don't have major obstacles or an aha moment of why you wanted to be a doctor? Go ahead, Dr.
Is it going to us?
It's for all three of you, whoever wants to answer.
Oh, okay. So I just rephrase that. Are you asking, do we have to have aha moments or?
Right. So the individual is a traditional applicant. They haven't had obstacles. They don't have an aha. They're just interested in going into medicine.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important just state in the overall scheme of healthcare delivery, what is the need? We need individuals who are scientifically rigorous, who are intellectually excelling, and who are compassionate, who clearly understand the need to deliver culturally sensitive care to a community. And you can come to that conclusion at any stage in your journey. You don't have to have developed that when you were 5 watching, I was going to say Marcus Welby, but many of us don't know who Marcus Welby was, so I'm dating myself. We want you to explain in your personal statement why you developed this interest. And it could be something that you've developed in the past year in college. It doesn't have to be sustained over time. It doesn't have to be an aha moment, but you have to really be clear and concise in your motivation. That's the preeminent question that we ask. Why do you want to be a physician? And if you can't really explain that, carefully, then and if you've only had a short journey, then we would be somewhat less inclined to consider a student. So, and the point is that you don't have to have an aha moment.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Dr. Berman or Ms. Shan, do you have anything to add?
I'm going to reemphasize where we started this panel. What is your why?
Right.
What is your why? And it may be, I am so drawn to medicine because I want to help human beings. So find the life experiences that help you further develop that. You don't have to have some story, aha moment, or crazy journey. You just need to have built a set of life experiences that helps further bolster what your why is.
So we have an interesting comment in here, and the anonymous attendee indicates that this is more venting input than a question, but I feel this moment, the support needs to come from our very supportive panel. How this will be more a venting input than a question. How one navigates so much disguised prejudice and implicit bias in any level or area of health field, from being a primary care patient to an aspiring medical student. I just wish I had a clue on how to navigate the distance between what is said and what's practiced. So we come across that all the time, don't we? That there is a little bit of disbelief that holistic review actually happens. And so how can each of you let our attendees know that you practice holistic admissions at your institutions?
Let me start. I think it's incumbent upon the institutions to document what they're doing to ensure the mission statement is actually in practice. We can't just say these words. We have to have facts, right? We're all in science. And so you have to add, the students have to ask your interviewers, okay, you say this in your mission statement. Can you tell me precisely what are you doing? You know, Casey Sheehan said, well, here's what we're doing. We have these free clinics that are student run, student engaged, serving this greater part of, of the DC. You have to look for really concrete evidence. Medical schools have to step up. And that is part of a process that Dr. Amir and I are involved in, looking at an expanded mission and then asking medical schools to state, what are you doing to execute your mission, so that you, the student, can be able to go through and discern who's talking and who's really doing what they're saying.
Dr. Berman, do you have anything to add, or Ms. Shan, do you have anything to add?
I think Dr. Ross said it passionately and truthfully.
Excellent.
I think the one thing I would say is transparent processes. We have really transparent processes. And I think that's an important aspect to this complex process.
Got it. So we have about 11 minutes left. We have 105 unanswered questions. So our colleagues at the AAMC will capture the questions for us, and we'll answer them and find a way to make them available to you. And we've had this question repeatedly. The recording will be available on the virtual fair platform in about 24 hours. So here's a practical question. How would you recommend going about developing a relationship with the school while between cycles if you're a reapplicant? Who are the people to speak with? How do you show that you're interested without coming off as a nuisance to the program admissions director? Is this even useful for admissions?
I will speak to our practices at Michigan. Our admissions team provides feedback sessions to anyone who reaches out to us who applied and did not matriculate here. And I would absolutely encourage people to contact our team through our website, and we will set that up because we want to advise students to help support their next period of time and then their next reapplication. We want to know what people are doing. We want to help guide where might have been gaps in your application, where there may be things that you can further build over the time between an application and a reapplication to make yourself a stronger applicant.
Thank you, Dr. Berman. I'm going to read this for you, Dr. Berman, because it's directed to you. God bless you, Dr. Berman. My wife and I worked with an excellent high-risk pregnancy OBGYN and couldn't have asked for a better advocate. I want to be an advocate like her when I become a physician. So thank you for what you do. Let's see, so many nice questions that we have here. Is it wise to stray away from semi-controversial topics and essays and interviews? For example, doing service and teaching to the undocumented workers in the United States. Would that be considered something polarizing that we should try not to get political about?
I don't find that polarizing. I mean, our goal is to find students who care, who are compassionate, who've demonstrated that compassion to a broad sector of the electorate, not any one group or others. And so if you've been involved in service, and if that is translated into an improved care for a population, irrespective of who that population is, that's important to share. There are very few topics that shouldn't be shared in your personal statement. I mean, obviously someone just alluded to some of mental health issues. That's a fine line, and you have to be careful about putting information out there that could be considered disqualifying by some schools. That's true. We don't talk about politics, red or blue, Democrat or Republican. We talk about equity. And so, you can stray away from that. If you've been involved as a working on health policy in a Republican or Democratic administration, that's great. You can say that. But, you don't want to come across as dogmatic if you go any further than that. And so, there are other questions that we don't ask. But, I for the most part, if it's service delivery, we want to hear that.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Here's a question specifically for you. Thank you, Dr. Ross. I really resonate with the WashU mission statement. I have such a strong passion for community care and addressing healthcare from a broader community standpoint. What is your advice to an applicant who fits the mission statement strongly and has good extracurriculars, but doesn't meet the academic credentials?
I think that gets back to this whole concept of holistic review. And so here, I'll tell you what we do. We look at the metrics and we'll assign a global score. And then we look at the experiences and we'll assign a score. And we look at the attributes. And none of those scores are higher. They are weighed higher than any other of those buckets. And so as a consequence, students who have, maybe have a lower MCAT are not going to be as disadvantaged because their score and their attributes or their experiences is going to be so great. So, that's what we're doing. We're all in a continuum of holistic review. And I'm not saying we're fully there at Washington University, but we do realize that we can try to de-emphasize that score, the emphasis on that score. I think that your application has to reflect your strengths, and then let us then review that and score accordingly.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Ms. Sheehan, I'll direct this one to you. How would an applicant who did not have the financial flexibility to volunteer frequently be assessed if they had paid positions in areas of their passion, such as teaching or working with certain populations? Would that be treated as interchangeable with volunteer work? So basically the service have to be unpaid.
Yeah, it definitely does not have to be a volunteer opportunity. If you have a paid position where you're giving back to underserved populations, that's viewed just the same to us. So it's really just kind of what you have passion, what you've spent your time in, and paid opportunities we look at just the same.
Great. So we have 5 minutes remaining. I think I'd like to ask each of our panelists to just give their words of encouragement and thoughts to our attendees. There's 121 questions, so we will not be able to answer them all. Again, we'll do our best to get the questions from our colleagues at the AAMC and come up with a document that perhaps could be shared on the platform. And just want to remind you all that there's an MCAT session right after ours. But Casey, I'll start with you if you've got some parting words that you'd like to share with our attendees.
Yeah, of course. I would just say the system works best if we are doing holistic evaluation and we are trying to find people that are mission driven and really align with our mission. That's really when all schools are at their excellent peak, like when they have a group of people who has this common belief and they all are really working together to improve healthcare and to focus on areas that they're super passionate about. So I think that's why we all do what we do. We're trying to find students who are going to be incredible future physicians and will also really excel at our institution and will be happy and feel like the med school that they went to is the one that they really could change and have impact in and really succeed in. So think about that. We are really trying to find applicants that are mission driven, not just the highest MCAT, the highest GPA. We really are trying to move away from that.
Thank you so much, Casey. Dr. Berman, any parting words?
I just want to say, I mean, we're still currently reviewing applications. It has to be one of my favorite things I do. I am reading journeys of thousands of people, every single one unique and different and important. You might not be ready to matriculate next year. Don't give up. Don't stop. Recognize that your journey is unique. It's important. And we want to get you into medical school. It may take some time. I want to highlight one additional question that I think is really important to mention. There was a number of questions about mental health. Yes, I think in addition to COVID-19, one of the number one pandemics we have in our country right now is burnout, and particularly in the medical field. So today, not tomorrow, not while you're in med school, not while you're faculty, but today, working to figure out what your resources are within yourself, your community, your institution, or where you're at that will support you, your mental health, your well-being to mitigate burnout. We are seeing so much burnout coming into medical school. We want to bring students in who are going to thrive and not just survive, because the better you are, the better you can take care of patients. So those are going to be my parting words. I do need to hop off to a meeting, so thank you for having me. You all rock. Take care.
Thanks, Dr. Berman. Dr. Ross.
I think that, my parting words really is not why WashU or Georgetown in Michigan, but why medicine. I want to get back to that personal statement. We really need you to probe and use some realistic self-appraisal, saying, what is about me that makes me unique, makes me someone who would excel in this field of medicine. What kind of skills do I have? What kind of thoughts do I have? What kind of vision do I have for medicine? What do I want to be doing in the next 20 or 30 years? And why do I want to be doing that? These are deep questions that you need to start thinking about now. And the longer you think about that, the easier it will be to explain that and to craft that into a personal statement. But make sure you really thought carefully. Someone asked a question about what do I mean by attributes? And that's part of this EAM metric that Dr. Amiri alluded to. Experiences, attributes, metrics. Experiences are things you've been exposed to. The attributes are that part of you, your socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity. All those things factor into who you are. First gen student. Two physicians as parents, who really motivated you to study. These are your attributes, and that's what we mean by that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ross. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. We hope that you found this session helpful. Keep your faith strong and keep moving forward and take care of yourselves. We look forward to seeing your applications. Have a great day, everyone.